Hi there, everybody. Thanks very much. I hope this little stream is going to be useful to you. I am responding to some questions I've been asked by students recently, very concerned about the state of affairs of the world at the moment. These are normally high school students who have been studying things like Nazism and the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. And they're looking to make sense of what they see around them right now. Well, we've lived through the first and hopefully the last Trump presidency, but you never know with these things. And if we look around the world and see figures like Bolsonaro, Netanyahu, Narendra Modi, Duterte in the Philippines, and the kind of the general orgy of right-wing grifters that you see populating the Anglophone media in Britain and the United States of America, it presents a really very alarming picture of the world, and I think we're right to be alarmed because we exist within the kind of the convergence of several crises. The most principal of those, the biggest of those, being that of the coming environmental breakdown if we don't act very, very quickly. But the confusion I think that exists for many students is that they see key differences between now and then. They look at figures like Hitler and Mussolini and say, well, does that mean that Trump was a fascist? Okay. Well, in order to answer that, and it is a complex debate, in order to answer that, it's important to look at some of the key features of fascism. If you go back to Nazism and Italian fascism and the different European fascisms of the time, fascism has this this is a kind of a creature of modernity, but it has this long narrative that it normally says we were once a great people, and then through this terrible villainy that was done to us, we were stabbed in the back, and we've been done down. But now the next part of the story is now we have the inspired leader. The inspired leader has come along and is going to restore us all to greatness, and he's going to restore us to a greatness based on this long national story that we have. This tradition that we all share together of being, the product of the Roman Empire, or this long Germanic history, or something else. I mean, every society in the world has a version of this. I think one of the key differences now is that fascism in the 1920s and 1930s had a defined utopian project, much as Soviet communism did at the time. Fascism said, we are going to make the promised land. And I think if Trumpism or American fascism has announced that at all, it's suitably vague and make America great again. But there's no real utopian project there. What there is a project based on simply protecting minority national groups, white, not necessarily as Rust Belt Americans, because many of Trump's supporters don't actually come from those parts of the country. They're actually quite affluent, but essentially safeguarding white privilege from the changing demographics of America. Now, of course, Nazism appealed to a proportion of the German population. It created all these kind of fantasies about Jews and the communists and the supposed threat of both. But it also thrived within specific historical circumstances. Of course, there was this wave of resentment and revanchism that was born of the perceived injustices of the Treaty of Versailles. Does 21st century Trumpist fascism exist in that context? Kind of. You cannot divorce it from the 2008 economic crisis. where the lingering suspicions that the entire social and economic system was an utter scam were confirmed, I beg your pardon, to large numbers of people. The Obama years were a kind of a period of, for the most part, disappointment. There was some attempts to stabilize a fundamentally unstable system, but Obama was unable and largely unwilling to do very much to fundamentally reorder society, and to undo the problems that have been created over 4 decades of neoliberalism, the kind of Thatcherite, Reaganite policies that all came from right-wing think tanks and economic institutes, the University of Chicago and things like that, designed fundamentally to smash the power of labour and to elevate the ability of capital to consume more and more of the returns from the economy. This is why you have in democratic societies around the world that have embraced neoliberalism, and of course non-democratic ones too, wild kind of disparities in wealth and income. That the returns go to capital, not labour, and that's, as a result of the destruction of the trade unions. So both the fascism of the 1920s and the fascism of the present are based in particular historical contexts. The fascism of the present, I would argue, doesn't have a clearly articulated utopian project. The utopian project of Nazism, and I say utopian in the broadest sense of the word. Hitler was building a racial utopia for the chosen people, the Aryan Germans, and not for anybody else. And that utopia was going to result from the destruction of Poland, the conquest of Eastern Europe, and the establishment of Lebensraum in Russia, all the way up to the River Volga, and the planned mass starvation of 30 million or more Russians. These sorts of utopian projects, and once again, I say utopian in the broadest sense of the word, are not possible in the age in which we live. They're not possible in the age in which we live, largely because of the existence of nuclear weapons. There's no possibility for that kind of aggressive expansionism. So you have to contain within your borders a reordering of society in order to benefit certain demographics. You can't go creating Lebensraum anywhere else. There's perhaps the only place that does happen is, as we're seeing currently, the illegal occupation of Gaza and the removal of Palestinians, and the occupation of the occupied territories, the ethnic cleansing therein. However, in America, what we've seen is the need by Trump to speak to particular core demographics. There's an alliance of the wealthy and the economically comfortable, who still look at the potential for demographic change in America with some small amount of anxiety and dread. And then there is the supposed left behinds, and the evidence is emerging that the left behinds, those who felt that they had received no benefit from voting for Obama, even though they did in large numbers, the evidence is pointing to the fact that they have less of a role in deciding, in shaping the 4 years that followed Obama than previously thought. And if you look at the biographies of many of the people who have been arrested for the January the 6th insurrection in the Capitol building, you find that they are largely well-to-do people. These are not the kind of the characters from a Springsteen song, the kind of the Rust Belt Left Behind folk at all. These are relatively well-to-do folks who have an eye on securing their futures and securing, and they believe that Trump is the man who will protect their prosperity, to ensure that that prosperity will be maintained. Do you find versions of this in traditional fascisms? I say traditional, but historic 20th century fascisms? Certainly. The anxious Mittelstander, the lower middle class, the shopkeepers, the small business owners were very, very conscious, not about any kind of ethnic demographic change, because Germany had virtually no ethnic minorities. It had a tiny number of Jews, a tiny number of Roma, some Poles that lived in Prussia, the Prussian areas, and some kind of French Germans who lived in the Alsace-Lorraine, but virtually none. The anxieties that were present in German society in from 1918 onwards up to 1933 that preyed upon the German Mittelstand, the small businessmen, were social ones. They looked at the threat of communism. They'd seen what had happened in Russia. They'd seen people like them essentially annihilated in Russia, and were very frightened of that fate befalling them. And they were also very frightened of being dragged back down the social ladder. These people would have probably had origins within the manufacturing working class several generations earlier, and the ability to rise socially was something they wanted to aggressively defend, and saw Hitler as the person to do it. So one key similarity, whether you have sort of this utopian mission or not, or whether you have something like this much more weakly articulated under Trump, this "Make America Great Again" thing, which is a kind of a series of kind of reheated sound bites from every populist right-wing movement of the past 100 years. What you have in Trump and Hitler, Mussolini, is a kind of a deal. And if you vote for me, if you support me, I will deal with the people that you perceive as your problem. I will deal with the people who are looking to undermine this way of life that we all like. I will deal with threats to your prosperity. Because the conclusion in Weimar Germany and the conclusion in 2010, 2010s, 2020s America is that the pie is not getting any bigger. This isn't like the 1960s when the global economy, the pie for everyone was getting bigger. And you, as a result, interestingly, you see progressive change, the possibilities of progressive change in segregated America. What you see now is a belief that we are in an era of decline. Whether that's true or not is beside the point. This is what is broadly believed. We're in an era of belt tightening. We're in an era of economic insecurity. We're in an era of crisis. And as a result, we have defenders who come along to present themselves as tribunes of the people who will protect them against threats, but who cannot offer a meaningful program. Anyway, I'll continue this stream later on. Thanks. Bye-bye.